So we don't know a lot right now. We do know, as you said, the Prime Minister is taking his time to make his mind up. One thing we do know is that Dominic Raab hasn't resigned. He knows what's in that report. The report itself doesn't adjudicate on him, but he knows what the allegations are. They were shown to him in fairness so that he could make a judgment on how he wanted to respond to them, what his defence was, as it were, against the allegations. He's seen them, he's not resigning. So it will take a sacking, or more likely, given that they're allies, a request from the Prime Minister for him to resign, for him to go. What else do we know? Well, we know how, we've come to know a bit about how Rishi Sunak works. He likes to get into the weeds of things. He's not comfortable unless he's done that. Not all recent Prime Ministers have been quite like that, but this one is. And so effectively in there at the moment, in what we are told is quite a dense report, full of all sorts of allegations about behaviour, he's sort of becoming an impromptu HR officer or something, trying to work out whether the legal definition of bullying has been crossed, or the civil service definition of bullying has been crossed. Meanwhile, a whole load of civil servants who gave evidence not anonymously but with their names, knowing that their names would go to Dominic Raab when he got that fair play look at the whole set of allegations, they're sitting around Whitehall wondering if he'll be back. Another thing that I think Rishi Sunak will be saying when he eventually comes to judgment on all of this is that it was right to take time over it. Due process is part of good governance. But of course he will know very well that there can come a point where that can tip into looking like dithering, and he'll want to avoid that. You can't help thinking they're already off grid. They'd like to get this sorted very quickly tomorrow. Some civil servants say Dominic Raab intimidated officials, belittled staff, drove some to vomiting with anxiety. A report into those allegations about a minister one official said was like a coiled spring of anger has now been sitting with Rishi Sunak all day. The Prime Minister wants longer to think about it. Here, 2 months ago, Dominic Raab keeping an eye on a Rishi Sunak chat with Keir Starmer. The report on Dominic Raab's behaviour appears to have left Rishi Sunak thinking it's not a straightforward case for his old ally's instant dismissal. Employment law barrister Adam Tolley was asked to assess the evidence for alleged bullying of staff, a breach of the ministerial code if proved.
So let's make Rishi our next Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
Dominic Raab was an uber-loyal supporter of Rishi Sunak's leadership campaign, working tirelessly through last summer, introducing Rishi Sunak at hustings, and even when it was clear Liz Truss was going to win, he called her budget plans a suicide note, throwing away any last chance of a job offer. Rishi Sunak, when he got into number 10 after Liz Truss's premiership collapsed, rewarded his trusted ally, making him Deputy Prime Minister, but also making him Justice Secretary. Again, a job he'd left 7 weeks earlier, to a massive sigh of relief from some of the department's senior civil servants. That kicked off the complaints and the investigation handed to Rishi Sunak this morning, which includes testimony from previous ministries Dominic Raab served in. And officials report into allegations that Priti Patel bullied staff when she was Home Secretary, found that she had. But the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson overruled it.
And I'm sticking by her.
This government will have integrity, professionalism and accountability at every level.
Rishi Sunak promised a different approach to governing, but looks like he's wrestling longer than many expected to come to judgment on whether Dominic Raab should stay or go.
If he's a bully, he should go. And the Prime Minister really should be able to read the report, make up his mind and get on with it. Stop dithering and delaying and summon up your courage and sack your deputy if he's a bully.
Well, I think it needs to be resolved. I mean, the Prime Minister probably has lots of things on his plate, so I'm not concerned. And it may be annoying for news outlets that they have to hang around, but if it's tomorrow, it's tomorrow.
Some of those who alleged bullying by Mr Raab now sit and wait to see if the man they accused remains a minister. A few of them claim they could quit their jobs if he stays.
Well, I'm now joined by Dave Penman, who heads the Senior Civil Servants Union, the FDA. Mr Penman, what do you make of this delay?
A farce is what I make of this delay. I mean, the whole process, the whole system is not designed to protect civil servants, and that's quite clear today. This is all about the politics. So if you're a civil servant who has been brave enough to come forward and raise a complaint against your minister, you could be sitting in the same building as him today. You find out about all of this from the news broadcasters. You have no rights. You don't get told anything. And then to be told that a decision is going to come today and then find out that it isn't, again from the news, not being told by anyone else, just demonstrate this is not a system which puts the people who should be at the heart of it, the people who would raise complaints about bullying or harassment. It's all about the politics.
Hold on a second. 8 formal complaints, multiple civil servants covering 4 years. Surely it's not unreasonable that the PM would take his time to study this report. It took 5 months to write. It's not unreasonable that he would take his time before he decides what to do.
It's not. But what's unreasonable is that he tells everyone, including the people who raised those complaints, that they're going to hear a decision today, that the outcome of the complaints that they've been going through for 5 months, waiting to find out a decision on, is going to be heard today, and they only to find out that it can't. That inevitably leads to speculation about why that's the case. Of course it could be he's just going through line by line. But remember, civil servants have seen this before. They've seen complaints that were raised against ministers where Prime Minister sat on them for months and then ignored the rulings. They're going to be sitting at home tonight speculating, why is he taking so long to make a decision? So for whatever the reason is that he comes out and explains tomorrow possibly, it's just not a system that's fit for purpose for dealing with complaints from civil servants about ministers.
Now, if it is decided that Dominic Raab is to be cleared of these allegations, that there isn't enough evidence or that they simply were not true, and he remains in post, what will happen, do you think?
Well, I think that depends upon what the Prime Minister says. He needs to make a decision based on that evidence. The problem is decisions in the past have been based on political allegiances. So if he is making a decision, remember this is quite an extensive group of complaints. It's 8 complaints, involves dozens of civil servants, 3 different government departments over a period of 4 years. That would suggest there is quite an extensive piece of evidence that's been put to Adam Tolley and the Prime Minister. And if he's going to say that that actually doesn't amount to a breach of the Civil Service Code, then he's going to have to explain how that is the case if he wants to keep those civil servants. Because if you're treated like that, if you feel that you've been bullied in the first place, if you're brave enough to make a decision and then you're patient enough to wait for that decision and then the Prime Minister doesn't explain it, then why would you want to continue to work in an organisation like that?
Now, it's interesting, isn't it, that Mr Raab's supporters, his allies, have always argued that he's simply very exacting. He expects high standards. We heard Jacob Rees-Mogg suggest that we can't be too snowflakey about it. How are civil servants responding to those sort of explanations?
Well, they're not explanations, they're insults. Bullying is abuse of power, and that means that there has to be a power dynamic between the individual who's doing the bullying. That's not the case when it comes to Jacob Rees-Mogg or any other of the anonymous ministers and politicians who have been coming out and talking about their experience of Dominic Raab. They will not experience the same behaviour as a civil servant does. So it's insulting for ministers or former minister or allies of the Deputy Prime Minister to talk in that way. And it's such an extraordinarily difficult thing to raise a complaint. The idea that these are snowflakes is just nonsensical. You have to complain to the Prime Minister about his closest political ally. Only the Prime Minister can even allow an investigation to take place, and the Prime Minister is judge and jury. And remember, the Prime Minister refuses to answer questions about whether he knew about concerns about Dominic Raab's conduct before he even appointed him. So people don't do that lightly.
Exactly on that point, and you've touched on it a little bit, but do you think the whole complaints process, the very fact that the Prime Minister is the sole arbiter of what is or isn't a breach, that needs to change?
Of course it needs to change. I mean, today just demonstrates what a farce the whole thing is. This is not a system that is designed to protect and support the people who come forward with complaints about bullying. This is a system that's designed to protect the Prime Minister. And it's long, you know, it was long overdue that the Prime Minister undertake some reforms. The Committee for Standards in Public Life nearly 2 years ago recommended a fully independent system. There's a fully independent system in Scottish Government. There's a fully independent system in Parliament. And that's what we need in the civil service.
Dave Penman, thanks very much for talking to us today.